The transport shuttle descended through the clouds, and Sergeant Marcus Chen watched the massive station grow larger in the viewport. The Convergence Academy looked like a wheel spinning slowly in space, its metal surface gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. Marcus adjusted his uniform and tried not to think about how far from Earth he was. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Marcus grabbed his bag and stepped into the corridor. Immediately he realized he was the only human in sight. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the hallway. Some had 4 legs, others had 6. Some had scales, others had feathers. A few floated past him without any legs at all. A tall being approached him. It looked like a giant moth standing upright, with fuzzy antennae and large black eyes. Its wings were folded against its back like a cloak. "Sergeant Chen?" the moth being asked in perfect English, though its mouth barely moved. "I am High Instructor Thress. Welcome to the Convergence Academy," Marcus saluted. "Thank you, sir. Happy to be here." Thress tilted its head. "We shall see. Follow me, please." They walked through the station. Marcus noticed how quiet everything was. Even with hundreds of beings moving around, there was barely any sound. Everyone moved carefully, politely. Nobody pushed or shoved. "Your species is new to the Galactic Defense Concordat," Thress said as they walked. "We have reviewed Earth's military history. It is quite extensive." Marcus didn't miss the pause. "We've had our share of conflicts, yes, sir." "Your people have been at war for most of your recorded history," Thress said flatly. "You have fought with sticks, with swords, with bombs that can destroy entire cities. You have studied the art of killing for thousands of years. We've also studied the art of peace," Marcus replied carefully. Thress made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps. That is why you are here. We hope you can teach our cadets something useful. But I wonder if a species that has spent so long perfecting violence can truly understand our way of warfare." Marcus wanted to ask what that meant, but they had arrived at a large room. Through the transparent wall he could see what looked like a training area. Young aliens of various species were practicing combat moves. They moved slowly, carefully, as if dancing rather than fighting. "Our afternoon tactical class," Thress explained. "These cadets are learning proper combat protocols." Marcus watched a reptilian student face off against something that looked like a walking plant. They circled each other slowly. The reptilian lunged forward but stopped just short of actually striking. The plant being fell backward anyway. An instructor called out praise. "They didn't actually hit each other," Marcus observed. "Of course not," Thress said, sounding surprised. "That would be barbaric. In civilized warfare, we demonstrate our capability to harm without causing actual injury. The opponent recognizes they have been defeated and withdraws. Most conflicts are resolved this way." Marcus bit his tongue. On Earth, that kind of fighting would get you killed in seconds. Thress led him to his quarters. They were small but clean. "Rest today. Tomorrow you will observe our classes before you begin teaching. I have enrolled you in Instructor Kresh's course on predator neutralization protocols. It will help you understand our methods." The next morning, Marcus found his way to the classroom. It was a large circular room with seats arranged in tiers. He sat in the back and watched as the other students filed in. A few glanced at him curiously, but most ignored him. Instructor Kresh entered last. He was built like a raptor, with sharp eyes and sharper claws. He moved with the confidence of a natural hunter. "Today," Kresh announced, "we discuss threat response when facing a predator species. You will encounter beings who hunt, who have evolved to kill. How do you defend yourselves and others?" A student raised a tentacle. "We use the standard protocols, Instructor. Display defensive readiness, maximize our apparent size, make loud sounds to intimidate." "Correct," Kresh said. "And if those fail?" "We retreat to a defensible position and call for support," another student answered. Kresh nodded. "All acceptable responses. Remember, the goal is to avoid violence whenever possible. A fight you don't have is a fight you win." He paced at the front of the room. "Now let us consider a practical scenario. You encounter a large predator in a confined space. Retreat is not possible. What do you do?" Several hands went up. Kresh pointed to a student who looked like a small bear with blue fur. "Create a distraction and attempt to bypass the threat? Good, but what if you cannot bypass it?" The classroom fell silent. Finally, a bird-like student spoke up. "We would have to engage defensively. Attempt to disable the predator's ability to pursue us." "And how would you cripple such a predator?" Kresh asked. "Give me 3 methods," the students discussed among themselves. They suggested targeting eyes, creating loud noises to disorient sensitive hearing, using chemical irritants, all non-lethal, all meant to slow down a threat rather than stop it. Marcus listened to all of this with growing concern. These tactics might work on animals, but against an intelligent hostile force, they would get these kids killed. Kresh seemed satisfied with the answers. Excellent. Remember, we aim to neutralize threats with minimum force. We are not savages. We do not kill unless there is absolutely... Excuse me, Marcus said from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at him. Kresh's eyes narrowed. Yes, Sergeant Chen? Do you have something to contribute? Marcus stood up slowly. Just a question, Instructor. When you asked how to cripple a predator and the students gave you those answers. He paused. Did you want methods to cripple it temporarily or methods to cripple it forever? The classroom went completely silent. You could hear the air circulation system humming. Every alien student stared at Marcus with wide eyes. Some looked confused. Others looked horrified. Kresh's mouth hung open slightly. What? Temporarily or forever? Marcus repeated calmly. Because the answers are very different. If you want to slow it down, buy time, make it back off, that's one thing. If you want to make sure it never threatens anyone again, that's something else. I just want to know what kind of crippling we're talking about here. A small alien that looked like a fuzzy ball with eyes made a squeaking sound and rolled out of the room. Kresh composed himself. We are discussing non-lethal methods, Sergeant. We do not kill, even if it's trying to kill you? Marcus asked. Even then, we are better than that. Marcus nodded slowly. Understood, Instructor. Just wanted to clarify the parameters. He sat back down. The rest of the class continued. But Marcus could feel everyone's eyes on him. They whispered to each other in languages he didn't understand. When the class ended, the students left quickly, giving him a wide berth. Kresh approached him. Sergeant Chen, your question was disturbing to the students. Didn't mean to upset anyone, Marcus said honestly. Where I come from, clarity can save lives. Where you come from, Kresh said slowly, violence is a way of life. Here we have evolved beyond such primitive thinking. Marcus wanted to argue, but he held his tongue. Instead, he asked, have you ever fought a war, Instructor? A real one where the enemy doesn't follow your rules? Kresh bristled. The Concordat has maintained peace for 300 cycles. That's wonderful, Marcus said sincerely. I hope it continues. But peace maintained by people who don't understand war is just peace that hasn't been tested yet. He left the classroom, aware that he had just made his job much harder. That evening, High Instructor Thress summoned him to her office. Your first day and you have already caused controversy, Thress said. But she didn't sound entirely displeased. Half the academy is afraid of you now. I just asked a question. A question that revealed a mindset we find frightening, Thress said. We do not think in terms of permanent solutions to living beings. Marcus met her large eyes. With respect, ma'am, that's because you haven't had to. Your species, most of the species here, you evolved as prey or as peaceful omnivores. You learned to run, to hide, to negotiate. Humans evolved differently. We had to learn to fight things bigger and stronger than us, things that wanted to eat us. We got good at it because the ones who didn't get good at it died. Thress was quiet for a moment. And now you are here to teach our children these dark skills. No, ma'am, Marcus said firmly. I'm here to teach them how to survive. There's a difference. I hope they never need what I can teach them. But hope isn't a strategy. Thress folded her wings around herself. We shall see, Sergeant Chen. We shall see. As Marcus walked back to his quarters, he wondered if bringing humans into the galactic community had been a mistake. Not for the galaxy's sake, but for humanity's. These beings had built something beautiful, something peaceful. And here he was, a soldier from a planet of soldiers, about to teach them that sometimes peace needs teeth. Tomorrow he would begin his own classes. He would show them what humans had learned from 10,000 years of warfare, and he suspected they would hate him for it, but maybe, just maybe, it would keep them alive. Marcus stood in the training hall and looked at his first class. 12 alien cadets stared back at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to fear. High Instructor Thress had given him a mixed group on purpose. Some were from prey species, some from predator species, and a few from species that didn't fit either category. Good morning, Marcus said. I'm Sergeant Chen. I'm here to teach you practical combat techniques. Before we start, I need you to understand something important. Everything I teach you is meant to protect life, not take it. But protection sometimes requires hurting someone who's trying to hurt you or others. Are we clear? A few heads nodded. Most just stared. Right. Let's start with something basic. Anyone here know what a joint lock is? Silence. Marcus sighed. Okay, I need a volunteer. Nobody moved. Finally, a reptilian cadet with green scales stood up. Marcus recognized him from Instructor Kresh's class. His name was Vec, and he had the build of a natural fighter. Thank you, Vec. Come here. Marcus gestured to the mat at the center of the room. Now grab my arm like you're trying to stop me from moving. Vec gripped Marcus's forearm with one clawed hand. His grip was strong. Good. Now, in most combat systems you've learned, what would you do next? I would attempt to push you away or intimidate you into releasing yourself, Vec said. Right. But what if I don't release myself? What if I do this instead? Marcus moved his arm in a quick circular motion, twisted his wrist, and suddenly Vec's elbow was locked at a painful angle. The reptilian gasped and went up on his toes to relieve the pressure. This is a basic joint lock, Marcus explained calmly, maintaining the hold. I'm using your own skeletal structure against you. If I push just a little more, your elbow breaks, but I don't need to break it. The pain compliance alone is enough to control you. He released Vec, who rubbed his arm and stared at Marcus with new respect. That hurt, Vec said. It's supposed to. Pain is your body's warning system. I'm just using it to communicate that you should stop what you're doing. Marcus looked at the other students. This is temporary. I didn't injure him. In 5 minutes, his arm will feel fine. But during those few seconds, I had complete control. That's what we're learning today. Control through temporary pain. For the next 2 hours, Marcus taught them basic joint locks, pressure points, and leverage techniques. The alien students were awkward at first. Their bodies were built differently than humans, but the principles were the same. Every species had joints, had points where nerves ran close to the surface, had ways to be moved against their will. A bird-like student named Chirik managed to lock the arm of a much larger bear-like cadet named Grum. Chirik's eyes went wide with surprise. I did it. I actually controlled him. Good, Marcus said. Now let him go gently. Never release suddenly or you might cause injury. The students were starting to understand. This wasn't about being bigger or stronger. It was about knowing how bodies worked and using that knowledge. During a break, Vec approached Marcus. Sergeant, may I ask a question? Sure. You held back when you demonstrated on me. I could tell. How much worse could you have made it? Marcus considered how to answer. Much worse. I could have dislocated your elbow, or taken you to the ground, or struck pressure points that would have left you unconscious. But that wasn't the lesson. The lesson was control. Vec's eyes narrowed. Show me. What? Show me what you can really do. Fight me. I want to understand what a human warrior is capable of. Marcus shook his head. That's not a good idea. Why? Are you afraid you'll hurt me? Vec puffed out his chest. I am Kresh. My people have been hunters for 1,000,000 years. I can handle it. The other students had gathered around, watching with interest. Marcus saw the challenge in Vec's eyes. The reptilian wasn't being aggressive, he was genuinely curious. But he was also young and proud. All right, Marcus said slowly, but we set limits. No strikes to the eyes or throat. No breaking bones. If someone taps out, we stop immediately. Agreed? Agreed, Vec said eagerly. They faced each other on the mat. Vec dropped into a combat stance that looked practiced. He had claws and fangs and natural weapons humans didn't have. Marcus stood in a relaxed posture, hands loose at his sides. Begin when ready, Marcus said. Vec lunged forward with impressive speed, claws reaching for Marcus's shoulders. But Marcus wasn't there. He sidestepped, grabbed Vec's extended arm, and used the reptilian's own momentum to send him stumbling forward. Vec caught himself and spun around, surprised. You're fast, Vec said. You're faster. You just telegraphed your move. Try again. Vec came in more carefully this time, feinting with one hand while reaching with the other. Marcus deflected the first strike, trapped the second arm, and swept Vec's legs out from under him. The reptilian hit the mat hard. Before he could recover, Marcus had his arm locked and his knee on Vec's back. Tap if you need to, Marcus said quietly. Vec tried to roll out of it. He was strong, stronger than Marcus. But every time he moved, Marcus adjusted the lock, increasing the pressure just enough to stop him. After 10 seconds of struggling, Vec tapped the mat twice. Marcus released him immediately and helped him up. Vec was breathing hard, his scales flushed darker with exertion. Again, Vec said, they went 5 more rounds. Each time, Vec tried a different approach. He tried brute strength, he tried speed, he tried tricks and feints. Each time, Marcus found a way to control him and take him down. Marcus didn't use any strikes, didn't cause any real injury. He just demonstrated complete control through positioning, leverage, and technique. By the 6th round, Vec couldn't hide his frustration. He came at Marcus with everything he had, claws extended, moving with the predatory grace of his species. Marcus caught his wrist, turned into him, and threw him over his hip. Vec landed hard on his back, the air knocked out of his lungs, but this time Marcus followed him down. In one smooth motion, he had Vec's arm hyperextended, his knee on the reptilian's chest and his hand positioned near Vec's throat. Not touching, just hovering there. The message was clear. If this was real, it would be over. Vec stared up at Marcus, finally understanding. "You could have hurt me at any point," he said quietly. "Yes," Marcus replied, releasing him and stepping back. "But hurting you wasn't the goal. Teaching you was." He helped Vec to his feet. The reptilian looked at his fellow students, then back at Marcus. "We have trained our whole lives. I have won tournaments, and you defeated me in seconds again and again without even trying to hurt me. You're a good fighter," Marcus said honestly. "You have instincts and speed I don't have. But you fight with honor, with rules, with expectations of how combat should go. I fight to win using whatever works." "That's the difference," a small voice spoke up from the watching students. It was Chirik, the bird-like cadet. "Is this what war is like on your world? Fighting without honor?" Marcus turned to face the class. "Honor doesn't stop bullets. Honor doesn't protect civilians. Honor is important, don't get me wrong. But when someone is trying to kill you or the people you're protecting, honor comes second to survival. I'd rather be a living warrior with a guilty conscience than a dead hero with a pure one." The students looked uncomfortable, but they were thinking. "That was good. Let me tell you something about humans," Marcus continued. "We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the smartest, but we're maybe the most stubborn. When something tries to kill us, we don't just fight back. We study it. We learn its weaknesses. We develop tactics and weapons specifically designed to beat it. Then we hunt it down and make sure it can't threaten anyone else. We've done this with every predator on our planet. Bears, wolves, sharks, tigers, venomous snakes, we learned to beat them all. Not because we hated them, but because we needed to survive." He paused. "That kind of thinking is in our bones now. It's what makes us good at war, but it's also what makes us good at protecting others. Every dirty trick I know, every painful technique, every way to hurt someone, I learned it so I could protect people who couldn't protect themselves." Vec rubbed his sore arm and looked at Marcus with something like awe. "Could you teach us to fight like that? Not just the techniques, but the mindset?" Marcus hesitated. "I can teach you the techniques. The mindset, that's something you might not want. It comes with a price. Once you really understand how to hurt people, once you've done it for real, it changes you. You can't unknow it. But if we need to protect others," Chirik asked, "if the alternative is letting innocents die, then yes," Marcus said. "Then it's worth the price. Just remember that every skill is a choice. Having the knowledge doesn't mean you have to use it. But not having it means you can't use it when you need it most." The students were quiet, processing this. Thress had been watching from the observation deck, Marcus realized. He could see her silhouette through the glass. He wondered what she was thinking. "All right," he said, clapping his hands together. "Let's practice those wrist locks again. And remember, control first. Pain compliance is a tool, not a goal." As the class continued, Marcus noticed a change. The students were more focused now, more serious. They had seen what real combat looked like, even a sanitized version of it. They had felt the difference between their ritualized fighting and actual effective violence. By the end of the session, even Vec was successfully executing joint locks on much larger opponents. The techniques weren't 3 weeks had passed since Marcus began teaching. His students had grown more confident and more capable. They could execute joint locks, escape holds, and use leverage to control opponents much larger than themselves. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. He had been teaching them how to temporarily stop a threat. Now he needed to teach them the other side of that original question. High Instructor Thress summoned him to her office. "Your students speak highly of you now," she said. "Even Vec, who I thought would resist human methods. They say you have opened their eyes. Is that a good thing?" Marcus asked. I am not certain, Thress admitted. But I have received authorization for you to teach an advanced course, one that goes beyond temporary measures. She paused, her antennae twitching. The council wishes you to teach terminal solutions. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. You mean lethal techniques? Yes. Not all of the council agrees with this decision. Many feel we are crossing a line. But recent intelligence reports have made them nervous. There are species out there who do not share our values. The council wants at least some of our people to understand how to respond if peaceful methods fail. This isn't something you can just dabble in, Marcus warned. Once I teach them how to kill efficiently, that knowledge stays with them forever. It changes how you see the world, how you see other beings. Every person you meet becomes a collection of vulnerable points. I know, Thress said quietly, but the universe may not give us a choice. Will you teach this course? Marcus thought about it. Teaching people how to kill went against everything he wanted for this peaceful society, but leaving them defenseless against those who had no such qualms was worse. I'll do it, he said, but only for volunteers, and only for students who have completed the basic course. They need to understand control before they learn destruction. The advanced course had 8 students. Vec was there, along with Chirrut, Grum, and 5 others who had shown both skill and emotional stability. They gathered in a secure training room deep in the station. Before we begin, Marcus said, I need you to understand what we're doing here. I'm going to teach you how to kill. Not in anger, not for sport, but as a last resort when all other options have failed. This knowledge is heavy. It comes with responsibility. If anyone wants to leave, now is the time. No shame in it, nobody moved. They all stayed. All right, Marcus said. He pulled up holographic displays showing anatomical diagrams of various species. Let's start with theory. Every species has vulnerable points. Places where arteries run close to the surface, where the spine can be severed, where organs can be reached with minimal force. Humans have studied this for thousands of years, not just for other humans, but for every creature we encountered. The students leaned forward, studying the diagrams. Chirrut looked pale, her feathers ruffled, but she didn't look away. Why do humans know this about other species? Grum asked. You've only been in space for a short time. Because on Earth we weren't always the dominant species, Marcus explained. For most of our existence we were prey. We were hunted by creatures bigger, faster, and stronger than us. So we learned. We studied their anatomy, their behavior, their weaknesses. We learned that a spear in the right place could bring down a creature 10 times our size. We learned that fire scared almost everything. We learned that persistence hunting could exhaust prey that could outrun us in short distances. We turned our weaknesses into weapons. He brought up an image of a human skeleton next to various predator skeletons from Earth. Lions, bears, crocodiles. We weren't built to fight these things. We're weak and slow by comparison. But we're smart, and we're incredibly violent when we need to be. We learned to kill efficiently because inefficient killing meant we died. The students were very quiet. Marcus continued. Now look at these diagrams of your own species. I've studied concordant medical databases. I know where your arteries are, where your nerves cluster, where your organs sit. I know how much force it takes to break your bones, how to cut off your air supply, how to cause brain death in seconds. Several students shifted uncomfortably. Marcus met each of their eyes. I know these things about you because I'm a soldier. It's my job to know. But I'm teaching you so you know these things about others, about threats, about enemies who want to hurt you or the people you protect. Over the next several sessions, Marcus taught them anatomy in detail. They learned about carotid arteries and jugular veins, about spinal columns and brain stems, about the difference between wounds that incapacitate and wounds that kill. He showed them blade angles, strike zones, and the physics of trauma. He taught them about weapons of opportunity, how a pen could become a lethal stabbing tool, how a belt could be used to strangle, how ordinary objects became deadly in the hands of someone who understood how to use them. The students took notes, asked questions, practiced on ballistic dummies designed to simulate various species. None of it was real yet. It was all academic, theoretical. But Marcus could see how it affected them. They moved differently now, their eyes scanning for threats and weaknesses automatically. Chirrut approached him after one session. Sergeant, I had a nightmare last night. I dreamed I was back home and I looked at my family, and all I could see were the vulnerable points you taught us about. The places where I could hurt them if I wanted to. That's normal, Marcus said gently. That's the price I warned you about. The knowledge doesn't go away. But remember, seeing the vulnerabilities doesn't mean you have to exploit them. You're learning this to protect your family, not to hurt them. How do humans live with this? She asked. Knowing how fragile everyone is? Marcus smiled sadly. We teach children from a young age that violence is a last resort. We build societies with laws and consequences. We channel aggression into sports and competitions. And we remember that just because we can hurt someone doesn't mean we should. Most humans go their whole lives without using this knowledge. But having it means that when something truly evil shows up, we're ready. In the fourth week of the advanced course, Marcus set up a final practical exam. He brought in advanced combat dummies with pressure sensors and synthetic organs. The students would have to demonstrate terminal techniques on targets. Remember, he said as they gathered around the dummy of a large predator species, every strike has consequences. You're not just hitting a target. In a real situation, this would be a living being with thoughts and feelings and people who care about them. Terminal force is only justified when they're actively trying to kill you or innocents, and no other option exists. Understood? They nodded. One by one, they demonstrated strikes to vital areas, knife hands to the throat, strikes to the base of the skull, methods to sever major arteries. Each technique was precise, efficient, and deadly. Vec performed a particularly effective combination that would have dropped most species in seconds. When he finished, he looked at his clawed hands with an expression Marcus couldn't read. You all right? Marcus asked. I just realized I could have killed any of my training partners at any time, Vec said quietly. All those tournaments, all those matches where I thought I was being so fierce and dangerous. I was playing. This is real. Yeah, Marcus said. But playing is okay. Most of life should be playing. This stuff is just for when the playing stops. After class, High Instructor Thress appeared at the training room door. She looked at the combat dummies, at the anatomical charts still displayed on the walls, at the students' serious faces. I watched the session, she said. It was disturbing. Educational, but disturbing. That's the point, Marcus replied. If it wasn't disturbing, I'd be worried. Do you think we've made a mistake? She asked. Opening this door? Marcus thought about it. I don't know. Maybe. But I think the bigger mistake would be pretending the door doesn't exist. Evil exists in the universe, Thress. Species that see others as prey, as resources to exploit. Pretending they're not out there doesn't protect you from them. Thress was quiet for a moment, then said, We have received reports. A species called the Vrexel has been raiding outer colonies. They are apex predators 12 feet tall with armored exoskeletons. They've ignored all diplomatic attempts. They see other species as food. Marcus felt ice in his veins. How bad? 3 colonies destroyed. Thousands dead. Our military response has been ineffective. They are too strong, too aggressive. Our forces are trained for peacekeeping, not war against creatures that want to eat them. And you're telling me this because the Council is considering forming a special operations team, Thress said. One trained in human methods. They want you to lead it. Marcus looked at his students who were packing up their equipment. Young beings who had signed up to be peacekeepers and were now learning to be warriors. The weight of what was coming pressed down on him. If we do this, if we fight these Vrexel the way humans would fight them, there's no going back, Marcus said. Your people will see what humans are really capable of. It might change how they see us, perhaps, Thress said. But if the alternative is letting the Vrexel continue eating our people, then I think it is a change we must risk. That evening, Marcus called his students together and told them the training facility had been cleared of other personnel. For the next 6 weeks, Marcus and his 8 volunteers would have complete privacy. What they were about to learn couldn't be done with an audience. Marcus stood before his team in their tactical gear. Each student wore armor designed for their species, carried weapons they'd been trained on. They looked ready. Marcus hoped they were. Everything we've done up to now was preparation, he said. Now we train for real combat. Against the Vrexel, there are no rules, no timeouts, no safe words. They will try to kill you. They will try to eat you. Your job is to make sure they fail. Questions? Grum raised a massive paw. How do we kill something 12 feet tall with armor plating? You don't fight it head on, Marcus replied. He brought up a hologram of a Vrexel. The creature looked like a cross between a mantis and a nightmare, with forearms ending in scythe-like claws and mandibles that could bite through steel. You're smaller, which means you're faster. You use that. You hit where they're vulnerable. Joints, eyes, the softer tissue between armor plates. You don't stand and trade blows. You hit and move until they bleed out or can't continue. He switched the hologram to a tactical display. This is what humans call guerrilla warfare. You ambush, you set traps, you attack from unexpected angles. You make them afraid to move, afraid to sleep, afraid to breathe. You get inside their heads. Vec studied the display. This seems dishonorable. We're taught to face our opponents directly. Your opponents are going to eat civilians, Marcus said flatly. Honor doesn't apply. This is about stopping monsters, not impressing judges. The first week focused on ambush tactics. Marcus taught them to read terrain, to identify kill zones, to set up overlapping fields of fire. They practiced on moving targets, learning to predict paths and lead shots. They learned to be patient, to wait for the perfect moment rather than rushing in. Patience is a weapon, Marcus told them as they lay in concealment positions for hours. The enemy who thinks they're safe is vulnerable. Let them relax. Let them get comfortable. Then strike. The second week covered explosives and traps. Marcus showed them how to turn ordinary materials into deadly surprises. Pressure plates that triggered charges. Tripwires that released toxins. False floors that collapsed into pits. Things that would make the Vrexel question every step they took. We're not trying to kill all of them with traps, Marcus explained. We're trying to slow them down, injure them, and most importantly, scare them. A soldier who's afraid of the ground they walk on is already half beaten. Chirik proved unexpectedly good at trap design. Her small size and precise movements allowed her to set up devices that others couldn't. I feel like I'm being sneaky, she said with concern. You are, Marcus confirmed. Sneaky saves lives. Your lives, civilian lives. Be as sneaky as you need to be. The third week introduced psychological warfare. Marcus taught them to use sound, light, and timing to disorient and terrify opponents. The Vrexel think they're apex predators, Marcus said. They've never been prey. We're going to change that. We're going to make them experience fear. When we hit their camps, we do it at night. We use flashbangs for disorientation. We broadcast sounds that trigger their primitive fight-or-flight responses. We leave their dead in positions that disturb their survivors. We make them wonder if we're even mortal. That seems cruel, Grum said. It's warfare, Marcus replied. And it works. A scared enemy makes mistakes. A terrified enemy runs. Our goal isn't to match them in ferocity. It's to make them decide fighting us isn't worth it. The fourth week covered medical training. Marcus taught them field medicine, how to stabilize wounds, how to keep teammates alive under fire. This was harder for them emotionally than learning to kill. Seeing injuries up close, understanding how fragile bodies were, made it all too real. You will lose people, Marcus said quietly during a training session on treating arterial bleeds. In war, people die. Even on your own side. The best you can do is minimize it. Learn this stuff well enough that you can do it under stress in the dark while someone's shooting at you, because that's when you'll need it most. The fifth week combined everything. Marcus ran them through scenario after scenario. Ambushes that went wrong, traps that failed, teammates going down. He pushed them until they operated on instinct, until they moved as a unit without needing orders. Vec emerged as the team's natural leader. He had taken to human tactics faster than anyone else, adapting his predator instincts to this new style of warfare. During one exercise, he successfully led the team in taking down 3 simulated Vrexel positions without a single casualty. You're getting good at this, Marcus told him afterward. I'm getting good at killing, Vec replied. That's not the same thing. No, Marcus agreed. But right now it's what's needed. Just remember why you're doing it. In the 6th week, they received their mission briefing. Intelligence had located a Vrexel raiding fleet, preparing to attack a colony world called Tamara. The colony had a population of 50,000, mostly civilians. Evacuation was underway, but it would take days to get everyone out. Our job is to buy time, Marcus explained, pointing at the tactical display. The main Concordat fleet will engage the Vrexel ships in space. We're going to the surface ahead of their landing force. When they come down expecting easy prey, they're going to find us instead. 8 of us against how many? Chirik asked. Initial estimates suggest 200 Vrexel shock troops, Marcus said. The room went quiet. I know the odds look bad, but we're not fighting them head-on. We're going to make them fight on our terms. Every minute we delay them is another shuttle full of civilians that gets away. That's what matters. The team spent their last 3 days preparing equipment, running through the plan and coming to terms with what they were about to do. Marcus watched them and felt a complicated mix of emotions. They had been students. Now they were soldiers. He had done that to them. For good reasons, but still. The night before deployment, Vec found Marcus in the armory checking equipment one last time. "Sergeant, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Have you ever been afraid before a battle?" Marcus looked at him. "Every single time. But you've fought in so many. Yeah, fear doesn't go away. You just learn to function despite it. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you careful. It's when you stop being afraid that you get sloppy." Vec nodded slowly. "I'm terrified. Not of dying necessarily, but of failing. Of letting civilians die because I wasn't good enough. That's the right kind of fear," Marcus said. "It means you care about the mission more than yourself. That's what makes a good soldier. Just channel it into focus. Use it to stay alert." "How did humans become so comfortable with war?" Vec asked. "Your species has fought for thousands of years. Doesn't it ever bother you?" Marcus set down the weapon he was inspecting. "It bothers us constantly. We write songs about it, tell stories, build memorials. We carry the weight of every war we've ever fought. But we learned that sometimes the only thing that stops a bad person with violent intent is a good person willing to be violent in defense of others. It's a hard truth, but it's truth nonetheless." They deployed the next morning. The transport ship dropped them on Tamara under cover of darkness. The colony was a sprawling settlement in a valley surrounded by mountains. Perfect defensive terrain. Marcus set up their operations center in a cave system overlooking the main approach. From here they could see the evacuation shuttles coming and going, carrying civilians to safety. So far, about 30,000 had been evacuated. 20,000 remained. "The Vrexel dropships will come in here, here, and here," Marcus said, marking positions on their tactical map. "They'll expect to land and immediately start hunting. Instead, we'll have prepared the landing zones. Chirik, those are your traps. Vec, you'll take teams Alpha and Beta for the ambush positions. Grum, you're on overwatch with the heavy weapons." Questions? Nobody spoke. They knew the plan. They had practiced it dozens of times. Now it was real. The Vrexel ships appeared on sensors 3 hours later, massive vessels that descended through the atmosphere like falling meteors. Marcus watched them come and felt his heart rate increase. This was it, everything they had trained for. "Remember," he said into the team comm, "we're not trying to beat them in a straight fight. We're trying to scare them, delay them, and protect civilians. Every minute counts. Stay smart, stay alive." The first Vrexel dropship landed in what looked like a clear field. The massive creatures emerged, their armor gleaming, weapons ready. They moved with the confidence of apex predators entering a hunting ground. Then Chirik triggered her traps. The explosions tore through the landing zone. The carefully placed charges caught the Vrexel in overlapping kill zones. Armor shattered. Limbs flew. The surviving Vrexel scattered, looking for cover that wasn't there. From the ridgeline, Grum opened fire with a heavy plasma cannon. Bolts of superheated energy caught the Vrexel in their vulnerable joints. More fell. The second dropship landed in a different location, trying to avoid the trap. But Vec was waiting. His team hit them from 3 directions at once, using tactics the Vrexel had never encountered. They didn't stand and fight. They fired, moved, fired again, always staying ahead of the enemy's response. The Vrexel tried to pursue, but every path led to another ambush, another trap, another surprise. They were strong and armed. The second wave came at dawn. The Vrexel had learned from their first encounter. They spread out, moved more carefully, checked for traps. But Marcus had anticipated this. He had prepared for an enemy that adapted. "They're being cautious," Vec observed from his position. "That's good, right?" "It's excellent," Marcus replied. "Caution means fear. Fear means we're in their heads." Chirik, activate the secondary traps when they reach marker 7. The Vrexel advanced through the valley in a loose formation, their sensors scanning for explosives. They found some of Chirik's earlier traps and carefully disabled them. Marcus watched them do it and smiled. Those were the decoys. The real traps were deeper in. When the Vrexel reached the narrowest part of the valley, Chirik triggered a series of shaped charges built into the cliff walls. Tons of rock came cascading down, crushing several Vrexel and blocking the route behind them. The survivors were now trapped in the kill zone. Grum opened fire from a new position targeting the rear of the formation. Vec's teams hit them from the flanks. The Vrexel tried to return fire, but they couldn't see their attackers. Marcus's team had learned to fight from concealment, to never stay in one place long enough to be targeted. The battle lasted 4 hours. The Vrexel fought with desperate ferocity, but they were fighting ghosts. Every time they focused on one position, attacks came from another direction. Every time they tried to advance, they hit another trap or ambush. By midday, the Vrexel survivors retreated back to their ships. They had lost another 40 troops and gained 0 ground. The evacuation continued. That night, Marcus gathered his team. They were exhausted, covered in dirt and sweat, but none were seriously injured. Crin's wound had been treated and he could still fight. "You did well today," Marcus told them, "but they'll come harder tomorrow. They're probably calling for reinforcements right now. We need to change tactics." "What do you have in mind?" Vec asked. Marcus pulled up a schematic of the Vrexel command ship in orbit. "We go on offense. Tonight we hit their leadership." The team stared at him. Chirrut spoke first. You want us to board their ship?" "Not board. Infiltrate. The Vrexel have landing craft going back and forth carrying wounded supplies. We steal one, get aboard the command ship and take out their leadership. Cut off the head and the body dies." "That's insane," Grum said, but he didn't sound like he was disagreeing, just stating a fact. "It's asymmetric warfare," Marcus replied. "They think they're safe in orbit. We prove they're not safe anywhere. More importantly, we send a message. Nowhere is safe from us. That's psychological warfare at its finest." The plan was risky, but the team had learned to trust Marcus's judgment. They spent 3 hours preparing, studying the Vrexel ship layout from intelligence scans, planning their route, identifying their target. The Vrexel Queen commanded from the central chamber. Kill her, and the entire invasion force would fall into chaos. The Vrexel operated on a hive structure. Without the Queen's commands, they became disorganized, confused. They captured a Vrexel shuttle returning to the command ship. The crew never saw them coming. Marcus piloted the stolen craft toward the massive ship, using captured codes to request docking clearance. The Vrexel, still reeling from the day's losses, didn't question it. The shuttle docked without incident. The team moved through the ship like shadows, avoiding main corridors, using maintenance shafts and service tunnels. They encountered guards twice. Both times the guards died silently before they could raise an alarm. The interior of the ship was oppressive. Everything was too large, designed for creatures 12 feet tall. The air smelled wrong, a mix of chemicals and something organic that made everyone's skin crawl. They were in the predator's den now. "I'm scared," Chirrut whispered as they climbed through a ventilation shaft. "Good," Marcus whispered back. "Use it, channel it into focus." They reached the observation point above the Queen's chamber. Below them, the massive Vrexel Queen sat on what looked like a throne of bones. She was even larger than the soldiers, at least 15 feet tall. Her carapace ornate and decorated. Around her, advisors and commanders communicated in clicks and hisses. "There are too many," Vex said quietly. "We can't fight all of them." "We don't fight them," Marcus said. "We set charges on the support columns, blow them during the confusion, and escape while the chamber collapses. The Queen dies and we're gone before anyone figures out what happened." Chirrut and Grum set the charges while the others provided security. The work was tense, every sound seeming too loud in the confined space. At any moment, someone could look up and see them. But the Vrexel were too focused on their planning, too confident in the safety of their ship. As Grum placed the last charge, something went wrong. A Vrexel guard entered the chamber and looked directly up at their position. For a moment, everything froze. Then the guard opened its mandibles to sound an alarm. Vec moved faster than Marcus had ever seen him move. He dropped from the vent, landed on the guard's back, and drove his blade into the joint where the head met the body. The guard collapsed without making a sound, but the damage was done. The Queen had seen chaos erupted. Vrexel warriors poured into the chamber. Marcus detonated the charges early, and the support columns exploded in sequence. The ceiling began to collapse, massive chunks of metal falling toward the Queen. "Move!" Marcus shouted. The team ran for the exit as the chamber disintegrated behind them. Vrexel warriors tried to stop them, but in the confusion, they were ineffective. The team fought their way through, using the ship's corridors against the larger enemies, staying mobile, staying alive. They almost made it to the shuttle, but a group of Vrexel cut them off. Vec took a hit to his shoulder, his armor cracking. Grum went down with a leg wound. They were pinned, outgunned, and running out of options. Marcus made a decision. "Get to the shuttle. I'll buy you time. Sergeant, no, Vec protested. That's an order. Get them out. Marcus turned and charged the Vrexel position alone, firing as he ran, drawing their attention. It was a suicide move, but it gave his team the seconds they needed. Vec grabbed Grum, Chirrut provided covering fire, and they retreated toward the shuttle. Marcus fought like a demon, using every trick he knew, every dirty technique. He took down 3 Vrexel before they overwhelmed him, but he had bought enough time. His team made it to the shuttle and launched just as the Vrexel command ship began listing. The Queen was dead. The charges had done their work. Back on Tamara's surface, the team watched the command ship break apart in orbit. Without the Queen's leadership, the Vrexel forces became erratic, confused. The invasion was collapsing, but Vec felt no joy. We left him, he said numbly. We left Sergeant Chen. He ordered us to, Chirrut said, tears in her eyes. He saved us. He taught us everything, Grum added, his wound already being tended by the others. And then he sacrificed himself for us. The Concordat fleet arrived hours later. With the Vrexel leadership destroyed and their forces in disarray, the remaining invaders were quickly overwhelmed. The colony was saved. 20,000 civilians owed their lives to the actions of 8 soldiers and 1 human sergeant. 3 days later, as the team prepared to return to the academy, they received unexpected news. A Concordat rescue team had found Marcus in the wreckage of the Vrexel command ship. He was badly injured, barely alive, but he had survived. They rushed to the medical station. Marcus lay in a bed surrounded by equipment, his body covered in bandages and synthetic skin. But his eyes were open and he managed a weak smile when he saw them. You made it out, he said, his voice rough. You made it out, Vec replied, emotion thick in his voice. You crazy human. You actually survived that. Hard to kill, Marcus said. Humans are stubborn that way. Chirrut flew to his bedside. You taught us so much. Not just about fighting, but about protecting others, about sacrifice. You were good students, Marcus said. Better than I expected. You took everything I taught you and made it your own. You fought smart, stayed alive, and saved civilians. That's what matters. The Vrexel are retreating, Vec reported. Their remaining forces are pulling back to their home systems. Intelligence says they're calling us demons, creatures that shouldn't exist. They're afraid of us. Marcus laughed, then winced in pain. Good. Fear is a powerful motivator. Maybe they'll think twice before attacking anyone else. Over the next few weeks, Marcus recovered. His team visited him daily, bringing reports of how the galaxy was reacting to what had happened. The Concordat was amazed that such a small force had defeated a Vrexel invasion. Other species were sending representatives to learn human tactics, but there was also controversy. Many species were disturbed by the brutal efficiency of the fighting. They called it excessive, cruel, uncivilized. They worried that the Concordat was losing its moral high ground. High Instructor Thress visited Marcus in his hospital room. The council is divided, she told him. Half see you as a hero who saved thousands of lives. The other half sees you as a corrupting influence who has introduced violence into our peaceful society. What do you see? Marcus asked. Thress was quiet for a moment. I see someone who did what was necessary. I see someone who taught my students to survive in a universe that is not. 10 years after the humans left, a council delegation arrived at Earth. The transport was smaller than the grand vessels that had once carried council representatives. More practical, less impressive. The delegation itself was small. Just 5 members, led by Minister Tivra, who had replaced Kaelvor 2 years earlier after his policies had finally become impossible to defend. They did not arrive with demands. They did not come with contracts or proposals or carefully worded agreements designed to benefit the Council more than humanity. They came with a simple question. What would it take for you to return? Elena Vasquez met them in Geneva. She was older now, her hair more gray than brown. She had retired from active diplomacy 5 years ago, but the human government had asked her to handle this meeting. She understood the council better than most, had spent decades navigating its politics, had seen both the best and worst of what it could be. The meeting room was simple, no grand chamber, no impressive displays of power, just a table and chairs in a government building. Minister Tivra and her delegation sat on one side. Elena sat on the other. Between them, the weight of 10 years and countless failures. Elena did not offer tea, did not make small talk, did not pretend that this was a friendly reunion. She waited for them to speak first. Minister Tivra was Aeldari, like Kael'vor had been. But where Kael'vor had carried himself with arrogant certainty, Tivra seemed almost uncertain, humbled by the reality of the council's decline. Ambassador Vasquez, she began, we come seeking understanding. The council has struggled in your absence. We need to know what it would take for humanity to return to council space. Elena studied her for a long moment. You want to know what it costs? Yes. It costs acknowledgement. Elena spoke quietly but clearly. Not just of what we did, but of what you did. The dismissals, the contempt, the 3 engineers who died saving your people while you blamed us for your negligence, the 200 years of contributions that you took for granted, the ideas you stole, the credit you claimed, all of it. Tivra did not flinch, did not look away. We were wrong. The council was broken, is broken. We thought we were the pinnacle of civilization, but we were just old, comfortable. We forgot that civilization requires maintenance, requires humility, requires recognizing value in others, not just in ourselves. Elena felt something shift inside her. She had expected excuses, justifications, the same arrogance dressed in apologetic words. But Tivra's admission seemed genuine, raw, the kind of honesty that came from real failure. You want us back to fix your problems? No, Tivra said quietly. We want to learn how to fix them ourselves. We want partnership, real partnership, where contributions are acknowledged, where all voices matter, where young species are not dismissed simply because they are young, if you will teach us. Elena was silent for a long time. Through the window she could see Geneva below, the city where humans had learned to govern themselves, where they had built institutions based on cooperation rather than hierarchy, where mistakes had been made and sometimes corrected. It was not perfect, but it was theirs. The negotiations took 2 years, not because either side was difficult, but because real change required careful thought. The new council charter was drafted, revised, debated, and revised again. It included rotating leadership positions, mandatory acknowledgement systems for contributions, review boards with representation from all species, transparent decision-making processes, and memorials on every council world for those who had died in service. The memorial on Kepler 442 was the first to be completed. It stood near the atmospheric processing station that had been rebuilt and properly maintained. 3 names were carved into polished stone: Sarah Chen, David Martinez, Jennifer Okonkwo. The engineers who had died because bureaucracy valued paperwork more than prevention. Below their names, a simple inscription: they held things together when others would not. May we remember what that cost. Humans did not flood back to council space after the new charter was ratified. Some returned, drawn by curiosity or old connections, or the belief that things might actually be different this time, but most stayed in human space. They had built new lives, new systems, new communities that valued them from the start rather than taking decades to learn that lesson. The council was smaller now, quieter. The grand chamber that had once held hundreds now rarely saw more than 50 representatives. Some species had withdrawn permanently, others participated only occasionally. The age of casual galactic cooperation had ended. What remained was more honest, if less impressive. Elena Vasquez returned to Kepler 442 for the memorial dedication. She was truly elderly now, moving carefully with the aid of a walking stick. But her mind remained sharp. Her eyes still noticed the details that others missed. She stood before the memorial as Minister Tivra spoke about sacrifice and service, and the importance of remembering. The speech was good, sincere. It hit most of the right notes. Nearby, children played, Vryn children with their delicate feathers, Thalori children with their scaled skin, and a few human children, children of the engineers and teachers who had chosen to return. Their teacher stood watching them carefully. The teacher was young and Vryn and clearly nervous about getting the historical details correct. When the children asked questions, the teacher answered patiently, mostly accurately. A few mistakes, but small ones. The kind that came from still learning rather than from contempt. Elena smiled. It was a start. Not perfect. Not what it should have been. But better than what it had been. Sometimes that was enough. Behind her, human engineers worked alongside Vrin technicians and Thalori specialists. They were maintaining the atmospheric systems together now. Not because humans had to. Not because no one else could do it. But because the work was easier when shared. Because different perspectives caught different problems. Because cooperation worked better than hierarchy. The galaxy was not fixed. Still had problems. Still struggled with old prejudices and new challenges. Still made mistakes. But maybe finally, it was learning. Learning that foundations mattered. That all contributions had value. That civilizations, built on contempt, eventually crumbled, while those built on respect might actually last. Elena watched the children play, watched the engineers work, watched the small signs of genuine change taking root in soil that had been barren for too long. She thought about Sarah Chen and the others who had died, who had sacrificed everything while receiving nothing in return, who had been dismissed and forgotten until their absence made forgetting impossible. The memorial would help people remember, would ensure that future generations knew what had been lost and why, would serve as a warning about the cost of taking foundations for granted. It was not enough, could never be enough. But it was something. A young human engineer approached her. He had been part of the team that rebuilt the atmospheric systems. Elena recognized the careful professionalism that all human engineers learned, the attention to detail, the quiet competence. Ambassador Vasquez, we are ready to start the new monitoring protocols, the ones from the updated charter. Would you like to observe? Elena nodded. She followed him to the control center, moving slowly but steadily. Inside, humans and aliens worked together at monitoring stations. They discussed system status, shared observations, flagged potential issues before they became critical problems. It was not dramatic, not impressive, just people doing their jobs well and being valued for it. That was the real change, Elena thought. Not the memorials or the charters or the grand pronouncements, but this, the daily work of cooperation, the mutual respect that came from working side by side, the understanding that everyone's contribution mattered, not just those who had been around longest or shouted loudest. It was a small change in a vast galaxy, a fragile beginning that might still fail, but it was more than they had started with, more than the Council had offered in 200 years, and sometimes more was enough to build something better. Elena stayed for an hour watching the team's work. Then she excused herself and walked back outside. The sun was setting over Kepler 442, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The memorial stood silhouetted against the sunset. 3 names, 3 lives, 3 reminders of what it cost when civilizations forgot to value their foundations. The humans had left quietly, had not demanded recognition or revenge, had simply stopped holding things together until the Council understood what they had lost. It had taken 10 years, thousands of failures, countless sacrifices. But perhaps finally the lesson had been learned. Elena stood watching the sunset until the sky faded to darkness and stars emerged overhead. The same stars that had guided humanity to the Council centuries ago. The same stars that would guide whatever came next. She was tired. Ready to go home, ready to rest. But before she left, she placed her hand on the memorial, felt the cool stone beneath her palm, whispered a quiet thank you to the names carved there, and promised them that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Not this time, not ever again. The galaxy was not fixed, but maybe it was learning, and sometimes that was the best anyone could hope for.